Top right-hand corner, sector data, so kind of new business, new customer data. We have a quite a vast business development community, as you could probably imagine. So for us, having the visibility around our existing operations on how they're performing, and all of the data dimensions that go with that, as well as actually getting some available data which is out there to support knowledge around what these customers are doing, how are they growing, are they diversifying into new business areas, that kind of stuff. That for us again is key, and again we're probably slightly behind the curve on that one. We don't do that effectively, but that is clearly something that we are working on. And then we've got other areas such as supplier data. So again, as part of, we're getting quite heavy into procurement processes with our customers, so we get a lot of information around supplier data, around product data. And again, some of the dimensions on that, not looking back, but using that backward information to help us, again, cement relationships going forward is quite key. And then you've got general knowledge data, such as weather, such as events and that kind of stuff, which helps with the planning. So there's a huge amount that we have to deal with. I'll talk about the journey and some of the pitfalls and some of the considerations on the next slide. But it's a bit of a minefield for us, and we've got a lot to think about, like I say, at localised account level, but also at strategic and country and business unit level. So, let's talk about the journey a little bit. And apologies, I'm conscious again that the danger of being the last in the day is that I'm going to kind of repeat some of the stuff that other people have said. So apologies for that. But these are just some of the key things that I thought worth just talking about, and I'm sure we'll have some questions at the end around some of these points because they can be quite contentious. But the first one that I'll talk about is point number one. So. You need to be aware of pitfalls, challenges and considerations. I think the key word for me around this first bullet point is honesty. We have certainly learned, I've been on hundreds of projects in the last 20 years or so. And it was a very quick learning curve for me in the fact that you need to be honest about where you believe there are going to be some considerations or some challenges. And those challenges could be actually going into point number two. They could be about the challenges with data. They could be about the challenges with the systems. The biggest challenges that I have found has been around culture. It's been around the people, not actually about the systems, not about the data. Because you can put the best system in the world, but if you don't bring your business people in with that, and if you don't actually get them to support it and really define what it is they want to do, then you will fail. So that is a real big one for me. There was a discussion earlier on about business and IT being segregated, and point number three, it is about being open and clear around the ownership of the IT in the business. In my experience, the projects that have failed are the projects that have been owned by our central IT organisation. The projects that have won, and no disrespect to people that are in the IT organisation, the projects that have succeeded are the ones that have been driven by the business, the ones that have actually defined what are the business requirements, what is it we need to do. Clearly there should be an appropriate level of engagement with your IT community, with your data people, but actually that should be through the consulting process as opposed to leading those opportunities. So I would always recommend go with what the business needs, not what the IT teams are telling you. Value I've talked about, making sure you really understand what the value is. Point number 5, speed and agility. I always use with my team the analogy of bite-sized chunks, which frustrates them, but I think it's absolutely valid, because what we don't do is we don't generate a 2.5-3 year project. We try not to. What we do is we understand actually what is that end game. It's reinventing the wheel, but I always put the analogy of actually working on the spoke. And making sure your spoke is correct, but always know what the size and style of your wheel is. Always have that in your mind. But it is about delivering small bits of value. And again, that value could be anything. But don't try and reinvent that wheel. Start really basic. Balance right. Again, this has been talked about a few times today. Getting the balance right between your data management, your governance, your focus areas. That could also include your security. So that obviously. We work with different business units, or I work with different business units which go from public sector through to retail and everything else. So data security, ranges. There's a big variable, but it's always something you've got to think about. But you've got to get the balance right on all of those things. Point number 7, allow failure. Again, I know this has been talked about earlier on today, but you should allow failure. You shouldn't be punished for failure, but the critical thing that I would always say is that you need to learn from it. You don't replicate anything that you've done wrong in the first place. You always make sure you do it right the next time. And point number 8, I'm going to come on to on the next slide, which is application of the how, what, why rule, which is a bit of a Bible for us at the moment, to be fair. So, the how, what, why rule, and again, maybe some of you have already seen this before, but I think keeping it simple, I think it's fair, certainly within DHL and my experience of other businesses. A lot of organisations know what they do, and they know how they do it. I think where they struggle is actually understanding why they do those things. So what we tend to do now, but again, we are still learning through this. Not all of our organisation does this, but I would always promote it, is we'll always start in the middle. We'll start with challenging ourselves on why we are doing something. That will always lead you to identifying the value, identifying the opportunities. And if you've got the right support in place, if you've got the right IT governance in place, so on and so forth, the how and the what will follow. And it will follow relatively quickly. But I would always absolutely recommend that you start with why. And when we talk about analytical disruption, you're probably familiar with this diagram in the bottom left-hand corner, which is about crossing the chasm. Now, traditionally, that is about technology adoption life cycle, but actually, I think it's very relevant when we talk about data and we talk about analytics. I'll probably get the question later, so I'll answer it now in terms of where I think we fit within that cycle. And I'd probably say we're probably part way across the chasm, but parts of our business are absolutely in the tornado. And I think realistically that's where we are. We've got certain parts of our business that are kind of, or like to think they're the early adopters. I would challenge that personally. But I think the key thing, which is still aligned to the how, what, why, are these 3 bullet points here, and that you need to be aware of those different types of business, those different types of operation. And you need to account for them by being open, by being innovative, by being disruptive, and allowing for change, and managing change accordingly. Okay. Crawl, walk, run. Again, some of you may be aware of this, but again, it's something that we've actively been progressing with, certainly in the last 2 or 3 years. If you're not familiar with this term, it's based around the movement from being a fairly static descriptive supply chain moving into more of a predictive supply chain. So crawling, as you'd expect, is the slow moving stuff, so it's being very descriptive. It's about having data and doing stuff with it in terms of dashboards or geographical mapping and that kind of stuff, which is based on descriptive information. It's telling you something is going on or has gone on. Where we're actively moving towards, which is proving quite difficult, but we are moving towards the predictive supply chain quite quickly. And what we're doing with this is remaining or retaining our descriptive tools and processes. We're not looking at changing those or disrupting those because they work. But actually it's about overlaying those processes, overlaying those systems with more kind of predictive layering analytical techniques and tools, which ultimately is driving us towards being able to sense and shape our demand more effectively. Streamlining our networks. So when we look at things like cost to serve modelling, it's historically been quite difficult to do that because we haven't had that right information. But actually, by combining some predictive tools with our existing network information, actually it makes our cost to serve modelling and predictive streamlining more effective. Crucially, it's also improving our agility and certainly our responsiveness. So again, it's starting to give us the visibility. Unfortunately, at the moment, it's probably more tactical as opposed to being strategic. But again, with an organisation such as DHL, we tend to try and have to start in tactical areas and then move into more strategic.